Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Coaching the Bible. I promise you this week, we will not be interrupted for a siren. Last week we were. What a week it has been. What a week it has been. It has been a day today of appreciation, of gratitude. Here this morning, additional prayers this morning, because since we last recorded last Friday, so much has shifted in the region on the political side, on just the life side, in terms of the ability to feel the sense of a little bit of freedom, albeit obviously it's not completely over anywhere, but it does feel like things have moved in a certain direction, certainly in our favor since last Friday when we last spoke in Coaching the Bible. The United States struck hard in Iran, and then 3 days later, there was a ceasefire. We lost more people since that, on that last day, right before the ceasefire, right, went into effect. The next day, I think it was 6 or 7 soldiers were killed in Gaza. That still rages on. Hostages are still not home. The political turmoil in the country is not resolved, but maybe there's a sense of progress, and that's hopeful. And to stop for a few minutes this morning and add in a little bit of extra prayer and thanks made a lot of sense. So I'm coming to you from the same location. The mattresses are still here, but the sense that we're going to spend any time in here under the threat of a rocket or a missile, I don't think that's going to happen, which is great, which is real great. This week's conversation in Coaching the Bible revolves around the concept of what I'll call strange bedfellows. When power unites, what principle never would? Strange bedfellows. We live in an age of dangerous and strange coalitions, and we see one in the portion this week. This is episode 240. So those of you counting season 5, episode 34, I believe it is. We live in this age where in the Bible itself, it starts, and you find it in this week's portion about Korach in the very odd coalition that he coalesces and brings together, which we'll get to in just a couple of moments. But around you, surrounding you, if you're paying attention to the politics or the dangers that exist in the world on the largest scales in the geopolitical realm, or even in the local space, who gathers together to protest, and who are they protesting for, and who are they supporting, and who are they against, and who are they blaming? It's not just an ancient rebellion. It's this pattern we're living through right now of this dangerous coalition. You get the progressive activists marching for regimes that oppress their very identities. You get academics defending political movements that would silence them. Silence would be the nicest way to say, silence them first. You have ideological enemies uniting under the banner of shared pain or shared rage. And we've entered this age, or we're living in this age of strange bedfellows, when power overcomes or trumps or overwhelms principle, and the shared grievances of the many, or of different groups of many, blur the lines of the moral boundaries. And as I said, it's not new, because in the portion this week, Korach's rebellion was never a simple political mutiny. And it wasn't just a theoretical game. It was a coalition of effectively contradictions. You have someone from the Levite family claiming priesthood. You have tribal leaders demanding more power and democracy. You have 250 elites who want spiritual equality. And none of it really fits together until you realize, or until you admit, until we make sense of the idea that the logic in self in many cases wasn't moral. The logic here was emotional. They're not driven by shared mission. They're driven by their sense of shared mistrust. And that kind of movement, it doesn't simply just challenge leadership. It really can fracture the soul of a people. If the people already weren't discouraged, demeaned, defeated, sad, broken from last week, or what took place, I'm going to assume in sequential order, the story of the spies right before, and the idea that they're going to be spending the next 40 years in the desert, and they're not going into the land. So then on top of that, leave aside for a moment Korach seizing the moment, adding this, is like a breaking, if that already was. And we'll get further into this in just a couple of moments. But ask yourself the following reflective questions. Have I ever supported a cause I didn't quite fully understand simply because it mirrored anger, pain, frustration, anxiety, stress, wonder? When I feel threatened or I feel that I'm not being heard, do I seek out people who validate me? Do I try harder? And in seeking out those people who simply validate me, even if their values don't align with mine, just because they provide that validation, is that sufficient? Is it enough? Have I done that? So like shared grievance vibe? Or if I'm in a moment of confusion about what's going on, do I follow the loudest voices or do I follow the truest voices? We've talked here before about the idea of the many versus the few. And as a leader, how do I respond when we'll call them coalitions from around shared frustration rather than shared mission present themselves to me? Or how would I like to respond to those kinds of things? Or how have I responded to those situations? You hope that doesn't come up on your teams, that's the kind of thing, but it can. And sometimes it comes up not in any sense of anger or being mean or viewing you as evil or bad, but there's shared coalition from a variety of grievances that come together. So this one's unhappy about the office conditions. This one's happy about compensation. This one's happy about their promotion. Those things are not the same, but it's shared grievance and can become more, and it's wrapped around not the logic or the relationship between those things, but simply perhaps the arrow or the point at which it shoots, which is you. And so in the Bible itself, this week's portion, the 16th chapter, the book of Numbers, we meet this person named Korach. He is of great stock. He has a very important role in the spiritual, religious, tabernacle, temple structure of the people of Israel. He's from the family of the Levites. We have our rabble-rousers who we've met before, Dathan, in Hebrew, Datan and Aviram. In the famous Ten Commandments, Dathan. We have this group of 250 leaders. We don't get exactly the names of them, but they're princes, they're leaders. And they dive in too. And so each one has their grievance. So Korach is challenging leadership, let's say. Datan and Aviram, Dathan is joining in the protest just because he likes a good protest. The 250 leaders want equal spiritual access. Moses pleads, he warns, he mourns, he falls on his face, but it continues to go forward. God responds. We know famously, the earth swallows Korach. Fire consumes the 250. The rebellion collapses. And then what happens? The people blame Moses. So here he just put down a rebellion. He saved the nation. Aaron also saves the nation in the course of a plague that ensues. And they get blamed. So the one who stood on moral ground gets blamed. The one who stood up for principle gets blamed. The one who took a moment to listen, to mourn, to fall on his face, to pray. The one who went out to the rebellion, Moses, gets blamed. So we have to quite understand what's going on here. We have to understand the emotional logic of these kinds of coalitions, if that's possible. And we have to understand perhaps some of the psychology of what you might call these misaligned movements. That might be a better way to describe them. And so let's reframe. That's been a term we've used the last couple of weeks. Let's reframe this rebellion because it's really not political. When you unpack it, it's very much emotional. And when that's the case, that makes it ever more dangerous. Because here's a really fundamental truth. As a leader and as a person, take this to heart. We think that if we share a grievance, then we must share a cause. So we have the same grievance. So I was oppressed here, you were oppressed there. And so we're oppressed together. And now we have a cause that we have to fight. Except it's not true. We have our grievances. We have our things that we fight for. We have the things that we stand up for. It doesn't mean they're all related. It doesn't mean they're all the same. It doesn't mean that they're all actually accurate, true, worth fighting for. Korach wants power. Dathan, in past situations, and perhaps now, wants to go back to Egypt. The 250 want spiritual prestige, religious leadership prestige. They don't agree on the ends. All they agree on here is the resentment. And that's the glue. The glue here is the anger and the resentment, and not any sort of a shared vision. It's that shared, maybe they'll call it injustice, but at least minimally the shared injury. And that's a confused coalition which is set up to fail, which is often why when you hear about populist movements, it's why they ultimately fail in many cases, because they're wrapped up in the grievance, they're wrapped up in the anger, and they're pointing fingers at the other, and they don't actually have any solutions. And you have people who come together in the shared grievance of it all, and then when they maybe get power, they have no idea what to do, they have no answers, they have no solutions, but it sounded good in the course of the presentation. And so underlining that idea of the misaligned movements, we'll share a couple of ideas. The first idea comes from Sebastian Junger, we mentioned, I believe last week, who wrote the book on tribe. And he talked about the idea that humans crave belonging more than they crave ideology. And so when a crisis comes, people bond more tightly to those who share their pain, even if they don't share their principles. So you'll get people from different sides of the spectrum, take your pick on the spectrum, but if they're suffering the same pain, whatever that pain is, it's an economic pain, it's an emotional pain, it's a spiritual pain, it's a religious pain, it's whatever, take your pick what the pain is, they'll choose that over principle every time. And so Junger in his work documents how people in war zones or after natural disasters form temporary tribes out of the idea of sheer survival instinct. If you ever watched shows like Survivor, I watched part of one season, maybe the first season of gazillion years ago, but part of what exists in those kinds of shows is the idea of creating tribe, coalition, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend, or we have a shared, grievance, or we can work together and it benefits both of us, even if we don't like each other, right? All that stuff, that's temporary tribe. And that's what Korach creates here. It's an emotional tribe with him at the helm, and it's not any sort of a principled or moral movement. And so the modern leader, the leader today, has to ask, who feels unseen in my community? Who feels unseen on my team? And who is offering them that sense of belonging that isn't me? Where are they getting that from? Where are they getting that commiseration from? Where are they getting the validation from? Who sees them when I don't? That's principle one. Principle two comes from Jonathan Haidt, who we also mentioned last week. And he says the following: our minds are moral foundations, and they are not moral calculators. And so what ends up happening is that we operate first from feeling more than we operate first from rationality. And so our moral decision-making is very often feel first and then rational second. And so we justify based on the feeling. So we'll apply logic based on how we feel or how we experience it, and not in the reverse. And so what happens is that the rebellions come from not logical arguments, but from the moral intuitions triggered by perceived injustice or exclusion. And so you get strange bedfellows because people experience it differently. People's moral intuition is not the same, but they are aggrieved, or some injustice was, brought upon them. And suddenly you get a coalition. And it's a coalition that a leader would struggle mightily to push back because they don't expect it, because it doesn't make sense. It's not logical. In Korach's camp, each group felt marginalized in a different way, and instead of reasoning through solutions, they banded together reactively. So I'm upset about power, and I'm upset about religion, and I'm upset about communal leadership. And instead of pulling it together and coming together with a list of these are our grievances and coming up with real solutions, that wasn't the interest. The interest was the emotion, and it was on attack mode, taking their anger at Moses and Aaron. And so if the leader, here's that takeaway, if the leader doesn't recognize the moral intuition that's behind the dissent, you can misread the rebellion entirely. To ask yourself the question is, what's really going on here? What's at the core of this anger, frustration movement? Whether it's justified or it's not justified. First and foremost, understand what it is, figure out what it is before judging it. Now, you may have to move very quickly, and that's the role, and that's part of the role, but that's the reality. The third principle here behind misaligned movements is an appreciation of the politics of these coalitions. This comes from a gentleman by the name of David Graham, who's a political scientist. So he studied how coalitions are often built on what you'll call the weakest kind of glue. The weakest kind of glue in this situation is a common enemy. It might be successful ultimately. So let's say you're living in a country that has a dictator. And so you have a common enemy, obviously, and that person has been, and the dictator has been that power for so many years. Your experience of them is different than somebody else's experience there. But let's take it down a notch. Let's leave it outside of the space of a dictator. Come back into the space of a community or company, even local government that's democratically elected. Common enemy. Or there's some sort of institution that exists that is established itself within the frame of the structure of power and leadership that is holding you back, maybe, or holding people back in different ways. And so shared opposition to the common enemy is far easier than having to come to agree on some sort of shared purpose or shared set of principles. I don't care why you're aggrieved, as long as you're aggrieved and we both agree that we're both aggrieved, say that a few times fast, we can now align in this coalition. And these coalitions then mask internal contradictions only until it's too late, and then they implode from within. And so Korach's rebellion in the Bible was doomed not because it lacked energy. It didn't lack energy, but it lacked coherence. And so when you look at ultimately how it came apart, you can appreciate that the lack of coherence is ultimately what may be part of what was its own undoing. But you have to ask yourself, perhaps like we did last week, as to why the people listen to the spies, is why did the people listen here? Why did they get all angry and upset and whatever? In the same way that we asked that question last week. They saw Moses split the sea. They saw Moses speak to God. They saw Mount Sinai. They saw Aaron blessing the people. They saw Aaron serve as the high priest. Like, that worked. That was good. We experienced it. That was serious. So why are they listening then to this person? Yes, he's a person of stock, comes from a good family. Why listening to him? And so when you unpack it, it's not anything more than the following very simple calculus. The emotional story of the rebellion was better at this moment. Maybe it soothed the pain of what was going on. Maybe it reset how they felt and saw and thought about themselves after being punished, quote unquote, let's say, or set upon being in the desert for 40 years. Korach and his group said, "You matter. You're holy too. The system is rigged against you." Have you heard that one before? Sure you have. Let's take back control. This belongs to us. It's not logic. It leaves out like what happened. It's identity. It's emotional. And so the identity, when the identity is threatened, people don't follow the leaders. They follow the people who echo their fears. They follow the people who amplify their anger and their frustration. Even if those people are morally reprehensible or morally compromised, it doesn't matter. They're the one who has the microphone or the megaphone who's making it clear about how I feel. And so when the Bible talks about Korach coming into play here, it's very careful in the wording. Right at the beginning, we have this idea that Korach set himself aside. He stood aside, separated himself from the crowd. He wanted to show himself looking and appearing a certain way, smarter maybe, deeper perhaps, contemplative. It's a manipulation. It worked. But the rebellion itself was full of contradictions because we know that the other group had their own demands and had their own interests. And so it's a mob, effectively, dressed in moral clothing. You matter. You're holy. You should lead. Everyone's holy. Everyone should lead. It's a mob. It's a mess. but it's dressed up, looks good, sounds good, good sound bites, good hashtags, good tweets, all that good stuff. It's a movement. Injustice, moral injustice, social injustice, emotional injustice, financial injustice. It's a mess, but it sounded good. So people wrapped in it because it made them feel good emotionally. And so when you get today, progressive groups defending autocrats and dictators because they have some sort of a shared enemy, let's say, that's how you get this. This is the woke coalitions. This is the cancel culture of the world. This is where identity politics comes into play. This is how you get, very simple level, but how you get a lot of what you see today in a lot of places. You get the silencing of moderate voices because I want to be ideologically pure, because it makes me feel good, because it's emotionally good for me, even though it makes zero sense. And we'll get to a point where we get to a cancel situation because the dissent or disagreement is viewed as betrayal. That's the whole Musk idea of the woke mind virus. It goes all the way to that extreme where nothing is possible. Everything is a betrayal. Everything is, you are grieving me. You are wronging me. You are against me. And then we go about weaponizing empathy, weaponizing the most basic fundamental emotions of humanity because we want to demand loyalty to the flawed cause that makes us feel better. And the result, collapse. People will be harmed in the course of it. People's lives can be destroyed in the course of it. Lies can swing around the world 100 miles faster than the truth because of it. And the people who hold the different perspectives, the different ideas, a different set of principles, they get demonized. And so what the Bible is saying here on some level isn't that you shouldn't challenge authority. You should challenge authority. But don't challenge authority with resentment. Challenge authority with principle. You want to start a revolution? Great. Principled ideological revolution. Sachs talks a lot about the idea that Judaism is a revolution against the manner in which spiritual and religious, even political entities existed in the ancient world and into the modern world. It's built on ideas. It's built on principles. It's built on values. Not always the loudest, but it is that way. And so the modern leader has to appreciate then how to handle this, because you're not going to get a situation where the ground's going to swallow up the people who don't like you, the people who are your enemies, the people who are shouting loudest at you. That doesn't work. Moses, for the most part, holds a level of restraint in this situation. He offers the test. He falls on his face. He listens. He pleads with God. But you, leader, have to consider the following thing. Part of the role as the leader is making sure that everyone on the team is being served by the work that they're doing, by the goals and the mission of the work itself, that they're benefiting from it, that it is actually providing purpose and meaning, perhaps, in their lives. And if that's not the case, why isn't that the case? So the role, of the leader is to pay attention to the contradictions, to the things that people are complaining about. What's going on here? Are people united by the purpose? Or are they united in their dissatisfaction of the things that are going on? You have to pay attention really carefully to the emotional resonance of what they're saying versus the logical coherence. But even then, in pointing it out, uber duper careful to be alert for the fuzziness in the language and in the logic, but also then in how you point that out. Can't just be like an attack mode on the entire team. The third thing here is, after you're listening for the contradictions and after you're watching for the emotional resonance of the argument, figure out who the quote unquote shadow leaders are. If it's in a community, who's actually stoking the energy and who benefits from the chaos that they are creating? It's a deep one. That's a hard one. And it's unsettling, and it's painful when you figure out who those people are, what they're doing, how they're doing it. And then if you even get all the way that far, why? But at least then you're in a position to clap back and come up with a solution. And perhaps more than anything else is the idea that you have to figure out how to create a better and a greater sense of belonging, of acknowledgement, of recognition, of seeing everybody before that level of resentment metastasizes to a degree that you can no longer do anything about it. And so what has to happen for you as the leader is you have to speak to the pain that's underneath the resentment and the anger. and not attack. Have to anchor things back in principles rather than in the chaos, and intervene early with a level of dignity and empathy and not a sense of power and dominance. Now, this is something that's trainable and workable and practicable for sure. And don't expect it to be clean. We're talking here in this section of the Bible about leadership in the wilderness. Leadership in the wilderness is not clean. You're not going to get a clean win here. You're always going to get dirtied by this. Moses and Aaron come out of this story not better than they were before. And so you're repairing things sort of mid-process. You're walking in the desert, let's say as it's imagery, with a torn shirt, and you have to fix it while you're still going. Not going to come out of this unscathed. That's hard. That's the truth. And so as we talk about leadership, and we think about leadership in the wilderness and in the spaces in which we lead, we have to consider all these factors and how we do this and how we perhaps can do this better. And to close it out, Korach made a lot of noise. But it was Moses who always tried and did make meaning. Not every rebel is righteous. Not every coalition is coherent. And not every cause deserves your voice, because leadership isn't about joining the loudest side. It's about holding very often the sacred center, even when, like in the story, the earth is shaking beneath your feet. And so here's a quote to end it out. This is a quote from Aleksandr. I'm going to butcher this last name, so I apologize. Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn. I think that's right. Who wrote in his book, The Gulag Archipelago, gradually it was disclosed to me that the line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties, but right through every human heart and through all human hearts. This line shifts. Inside us, it oscillates with the years. This sentiment, this idea, is from his reflections after surviving the Soviet prison camps. You probably could read similar language in Sharansky's writings on it as well. He emphasized that good and evil coexist in every person, and the boundary between them moves with us over time. And so what we have to think about is being grounded in truth, being grounded in principle, being grounded in values, figuring out how we can hold the sacred center, figuring out how we can be proactive and preemptive when these kinds of things start to percolate, and to operate from a space of empathy, from a space of goodness, from a space of seeing other, and so that the coalition of the strange bedfellows doesn't actually come and bite us in the end. That is Coaching the Bible for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you have a wonderful, glorious, incredible weekend ahead of you. And I look forward to seeing you always next week. Take care.